Good governance never depends upon laws, but upon the personal qualities of those who govern. Good evening and welcome. This is Face the Nation. Tonight on the show, we're doing things a bit differently. We will tell you how to get rich. It's all about money. Where is the country heading economically? And where is the country standing today? Do we have the money required to move forward? Are we on the right track? To discuss all this and more, we have the man who is in charge of the finances of the country, the Minister of Finance of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, Honorable Ravi Karunayaka. A very good evening to you and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Samir, for giving this opportunity.
Nice to have you on board, Mr. Karunayaka. Starting off, did you ever expect to be here today after the no confidence motion that was brought against you in Parliament? Congratulations, you defeated the motion.
Thank you. Yes, I certainly did expect to come here, but I didn't know it will be as quick as this. But I'm happy to face the nation because I think there's a need to give a lot of moral boost or a confidence factor to the country, because this is the time when the country is about to take off, and I need to mobilize everybody behind us to ensure that the sense of confidence emanates to the market itself.
Many say the country's economy is in dire straits, Mr. Karunayaka, and this is one of the reasons that the no confidence motion was brought against you. What is the state of the country's economy?
Well, I think if you get to the bottom of it, you should get to the origin of where it is not a brought forward, it was it's not the carry forward, it was the brought forward that we have a problem. On the 8th of January 2015, with President Maithripala Sirisena being elected as the President and our Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe being elected as the Prime Minister, this country was taken to a new destiny. And that was to ensure the wishes of the people through the promises that we given have got to be looked at in a new direction. Now, at the time the economy was handed over to us, it was in a perilous state. If I may put it in another way, it was like a grenade where the pin was taken and not knowing at what time it exploded. So we had to first ensure that to neutralize, bring the economy back into good order. And through that process, we had to bring in financial discipline, which was sadly lacking. In a country, you quite rightly said, it is not laws that run the country, it is who is behind the system that gets the job done. And to that extent, I am proud to say President and Prime Minister together with us as a cabinet of members have been able to bring that sense of financial discipline that had been fast eroded in the last 10-11 years.
Mr. Karunayaka, this is what was expected by your government. Your government knew the country's economy was not in the right track, was facing problems, and you all came in on the 17th of August promising many pledges to the public. You all said money will be put into pockets, bracelets will be given to everyone, cars will be given to everyone. However, the recent policies adopted by your government does not help in any way for people to gain money.
I wouldn't say that.
Can they get rich?
I wouldn't say that. If you look at it, if you break it up into two parts, the first 100 days, we gave 100 promises, 97 were basically implemented, and those are still in vogue. If you look at the public servants who are never paid for the last 10-11 years, got 165 billion a year added on to the cost. And this is of the taxpayers. You look at the areas of pensions were paid, the cost of living was reduced. Now, the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, at every temple, he makes one clarion call, cost of living, then and today. If he only realizes when he handed over, the gas which was 2,600 is 1,300 today, petrol which was 165 is 117 today, diesel that was 110 is 85 today. You look at milk powder which was 460 is 325 domestically, and otherwise 380 if I'm not wrong. The canned fish domestically manufactured is 135 when it was 240. So these still remain. You look at the flour prices are reduced at least 10 rupees before, more than what it was before. So if you compare to when we got and what it is today, certainly there's a huge reduction. But that doesn't mean that when we can give a better price, we must ensure that that is given to the people. But there's a necessity to ensure that we correct ourselves, get the monies, and then redistribute it, unlike just redistributing without money in the pocket.
Mr. Karunayaka, you said reductions have been made. But does this reflect on the pocket of the normal human being living in Sri Lanka, the normal citizen?
Well, the canned fish, the dal, the sugar, the milk powders are taken by the normal hoi polloi, and they are the ones who basically get this feeling that yes, there is a reduction in cost of living, but I'm sure much more is expected. But remember, we have just got the economy, we need to get things done. You could see the tremendous boost that is there from countries such as Japan, China, European Union, Korea, all of them India eagerly looking at trying to assist us. Last meeting that we had in Japan, where for the first time a president of this country was invited, and you had the G7 delivering us almost 1.2 billion Shamara bonds and almost 2.8 billion in Japanese development policy loans, with further things of trying to finance, the MRTs in Sri Lanka, other port activity in Sri Lanka. So the spend is there. But the problem that we have is the capital expenditure that needs to be met can be done futuristically for the future projects. But you cannot use these loans to pay the past sins. And that past sin is something humongous.
Mr. Karunaika, you said about the salary revision that was given by your government to the state sector employees, which was 10,000 rupees per person. Was it carefully thought of? Because you also mentioned that taxes were also on your cards at that time, but this was not mentioned to the public at that time. However, now you have a 15% tax that has been slapped on the human beings, like the citizens of this country. Why?
Well, if I may say that particular one, the first spend for year 2015, every single election promise that was given was money found from that year, nothing added on to public debt. That was the first sign of financial discipline that was there, which was sadly lacking before. The first time a budget is given where the recurrent expenditure is met by government revenue. Previously, the recurrent expenditure also had to be borrowed to be paid. So you could see that we have converted the micro into macro policies and ensure that financial discipline comes in.
Now, what is this 15% VAT, if that is the case?
Well, VAT is, I would basically team, it is moving from 11 to 15, which is a 4% increase. So it was previously looked at 2% more to NBT, but that was taken off, and 4% added on to VAT. Now, the 4% VAT is simply, I would term it, as a Rajapaksa levy for the past sins that were there to pay the past outstandings.
Why must the people shoulder that burden, Mr. Karunaika?
Well, they tolerated Rajapaksa's regime for 11 years. They didn't have the backbone to stand up, because either fear of white vans, or we disappearing the next day, or brutalized attacks like Sirasa that was attacked. That was the fear they had. So if they were silently taking it on there, where does the money come in? Does it come from private sources? No, it has to come from the taxpayers. And unfortunately, that burden fell onto us. You
said something very interesting, Mr. Karunaika. I want to drag your attention to that and then open the floor for questions from our journalist. You said the former president should be held responsible for what happened. Your Prime Minister, the leader of the United National Party, said in Parliament when the debate came in for your no-confidence motion, he said, the former president in his capacity as finance minister violated the provisions of the Fiscal Management Responsibility Act, and I quote, we should bring a motion against him. He should be suspended from Parliament for 1 week and sent to Uganda, a statement that was made by your leader.
Yes.
Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe. Why wasn't a no-confidence motion brought back then if you all knew that he was not doing the right thing as far as Sri Lanka is concerned?
Well,
why not at that time? And why now? Why you all discuss it
At
now?
that time, you can't bring a no-confidence motion against the president. He is the finance minister. That's why my prime minister mentioned, this is the first time you have a right to bring a no-confidence against a finance minister, because there is a full-time finance minister who doesn't have executive powers, or at least the privileges to shield himself from a no-confidence motion. So you could see the difference that is there. Now we are held responsible. The ministry has a minister led by the Prime Minister and the President, and through the cabinet we get things done. So you have a human face that is there, able to take up the pressures that are there. Likewise, they brought a no-confidence, and I must say the President, the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Minister with all the MPs gave the resounding victory that was expected. And you could see the no-confidence motion brought against us finally boomerang to no confidence on the opposition.
Ministers of your cabinet said that they are against the no-confidence motion because it's an indictment against the government and not in support of the individual, Mr. Ravi Karunaika. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't know what minister said so, but it was a collective responsibility. I mean, certainly I, as a finance minister, faces any criticism or anything that comes in, and I must shoulder. But my colleagues, the President and the Prime Minister, gave all the necessary feeling that we were collectively together as one. And I really appreciate that, because it was not just left in the lurch, just saying that this is your baby. It was collective responsibility. So I really appreciate that, and I must share that with the nation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ravi Karunanayake.
Sorry, I didn't answer one of the questions. My Prime Minister mentioned that Mahinda Rajapaksa should be held responsible, just like what has happened in Brazil. The president was basically impeached for no other reason, for not disclosing in Parliament for what was 2013-14 expenditure. And that is a natural right, or a right that the people have, and that should be utilized. So this was known, because when the outstanding, you asked, we coming into the government, we knew that the economy was bad, but we never knew that there was concealment. There was basically unethical reporting that was there. Even IMF in their report to us, where they brought a forensic team that was there, and they themselves were astonished to see that almost 1.3 trillion was not reported as public debt.
You spoke of the Brazilian president, I believe, Mr. Karunanayake. What are you all doing about the former president, if that is the case? What action have you all taken?
Well, impeachment is not good enough for what he has done. He basically...
What are you doing about it now?
Beg your pardon?
What are you all doing about it
now?
Well,
certainly, this was stated only last week, and with necessary action will be taken to fulfill what was told by the Prime Minister.
However, this was something that was promised on the 8th of January prior to the elections. Even you, in election podium, said that good governance is what we want. We will bring those responsible to book. Now you're saying, directly accusing the former president of taking money from the public. What are you doing about it now? 1.5 years now.
That particular thing is reporting that what he has at public office didn't inform the parliament the real true position. Now, but as for the corruption and all, you don't need to tell. Everyone knows what is on.
But nothing has been done.
No, but that's the difference that you said, good governance. We don't expect. What is expected to be done by the police, let the police do it. What is expected by the judiciary will be done by the judiciary, not by the politicians. That's the difference, unfortunately. We had an Attorney General who basically, up to January, was doing something which was only helping the corrupt. When we said to arrest, he says, don't arrest. I mean, that's the type of fate that we had, because it was people appointed by the last without independent commission. You saw Amro Palpita trying to be appointed. Our good governance, independent public service says no to that. And then that's the support that we go on. So I do really subscribe to the feeling that the benefit of the good governance takes time, but I'm sure that has a democratic process in it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karunanayake, for your thoughts on the first round. I open the floor for questions from our journalists. On to my right is Nadim Majid. On to my immediate left is Chaturang Haporachi. And also on to my far left is Charita. Let's start off the second round with Charita.
Mr. Karunanayake, you survived 2 no confidence motions. Perhaps you won the confidence of the majority in Parliament. But do you think you have the confidence of the masses of this country to manage the finances, especially in a situation where you have slapped new taxes and asked them to tighten their belts?
Remember, slapping new taxes is not the problem. The sweetness or low prices are much forgotten as the quality of good service comes in. So our intention is to ensure that we basically get the correct things done. When we are handed over perilous economy, what else do you expect to take the country forward? Can you run a country with empty coffers? The foreign people will look at what we talk and how we express ourselves and how we action ourselves. So we had to get our house in order. The first one was to ensure that we have fiscal consolidation. And that is why the Prime Minister very correctly stated that we need to have a budget deficit of 3.5 by year 2020. To that process, we had to have a fiscal space to be increased. So our revenues needed to be increased. It was in a very dangerous situation of almost 10.6% of GDP, as opposed to our peers that were having almost 17-18%. So that gap had to be increased in revenue-wise. Other one was to reduce the costs, so that revenues increase, cost reduction gives us a fiscal space. What for? Education, health, infrastructure, as well as able to ensure that a more decent tax rate is there. So what we have done is, unfortunately, and for the reason of the country, what we inherited, we are taxing the well-to-do to a certain extent so that we can ensure that this is replowed back into the economy. Can we tax the person who has been taxed simply over and over again? There are 45% who earn less than $2 a day. So there is a tax portion that only you can recover from them. So we have moved a little to a more, I would say, to a structure where the affluent will basically pay for the social development of the country. Because if there is unrest in the country, that's the top end that will basically have to pay the price.
Do you think your job would have been easier if you under the you under the previous government, the opposition, if you had played a more proactive role against excessive borrowings? Do you think your job would have been easier today?
Charita, how can we basically oppose the executive who is the finance minister and in parliament our voice is unheard of? We certainly did. We, in a matter of fact, even went to the extent of saying certain things cannot be paid and we will not honor that. But that would be more from a rhetoric of a opposition point of view. But technically, a democratic government elected has to pay or has to carry forward the past sins as well. So whatever noise that we made, it was good enough to ensure that the people made that decision on the 8th of January 2015. So I beg of the nation, I'm sorry, we love to reduce rates, we love to reduce taxes, but there is a point of no return. We are at that point. Give us 6 to 8, 9 months, we'll bring the economy into good order. And through that, with the increase in the economic activity, with more taxes being brought in, we will be able to give that dividends back to the people.
Minister, you were talking about the need. True, governments need money to run. You can't run on empty coffers. All the social development programs, the infrastructure projects, they all need money. This was outlined by the Prime Minister's economic policy statement before the budget last year, when he said it's time to tighten our belts. But I know that this order has now been postponed or cancelled on the orders of the Prime Minister. But what worries me is that there appears to be a lack of consistency in the train of thought, in that you're asking people to tighten their belts, but you're passing a supplementary estimate in Parliament to buy vehicles worth 1.8 billion rupees. So what's the thinking? Why is there a mismatch in the thinking? Tighten your belts, 1.8 billion for vehicles. Vehicles valued at 30 million rupees or more.
Now that's a very good question you asked, because I think that deserves an answer to the extent 1.6 billion allocated. Of that, 78% is taxes. Unlike the previous, we have made each ministry held responsible for their pay. So on that particular basis, duty has been imposed on that ministry. Previously, they would have basically ordered cars and come through some account without even accounting for it. Now there are 1,527 vehicles that went to the President's office, still not knowing where it is at the moment. Asset registers are not there. Orders have come from various places. Still security vehicles are with the former President. The former Secretary of Defense, I'm informed, that I don't know subject to, that the vehicles are still there being used. So likewise.
That's the other thing, Minister. You talk about officials of the former regime or people in the former regime still having public money in their possession. They are accused of taking public money, stealing public money. If I recall, the current Foreign Minister, Mangala Samaraweera, shortly after the January 8th presidential election victory, convened a press briefing and said that the Rajapaksa family had taken up to $18 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Then we had alongside with the Panama Papers, there was a global think tank called Global Financial Integrity, which released a report saying that there had been illegal outflows from the country within a 10-year period amounting to 2.8 trillion rupees. So my question is, why isn't the government, or why does it appear that there is no concern on the part of the government in getting these funds back? Won't that be a big boost for your coffers?
Absolutely. We will be the first, and we are already on it. If you look at the Panama story, this broke about 2 months ago. We have written to the 137 names that have become public and told them to respond whether it is accurate or not. And after they do so, depending on the response we get, we will take necessary action. If they become silent, we will ensure that all of them will basically have a follow-up action that will be taken. There are Swiss accounts that were there before, almost 4 or 5 years ago, and to date, you basically write to them, they come with a no answer. Now with that, the legal process thereafter is where to take it to, because somebody says that there's a Swiss account and they say it is not there. Where is the judicial remedy that we can take? What is the course that we can go to? These are the problems that are there, but that does not deter us. We are going after every single person, and we will ensure. As for the Rajapaksas, yes, whether it is Mahinda, whether it is Gotabaya, whether it is Basil, whether it is Namal, doesn't make any difference. not the positions he held. Whatever, if they had public office, they must have the decency to do it in the manner that is expected of them. And we will ensure that everybody will be brought to book.
Minister, one more question before I hand it over to Chaturanga. The UNP is generally viewed as a capitalist party. A lot of people in industry, in business, view the UNP as a pro-business capitalist party. However, we saw in the run-up to the election, both in January 2015 and in August 2015, the UNP, or many members of the UNP, adopted the stance of moving towards what they called a social market economy.
That's right.
Does this line up with the capitalist image of the UNP? You're the assistant leader of the party. Are you capitalist? Are you socialist?
No. We are having a situation at the moment. There is no capitalist country that is there in the world. There is no fully blown communist country in the world. So it is the in-between with the two. Now from the middle of the path, to what degree do you basically take that? We believe that the private sector has failed on some areas miserably. On some areas they've excelled much better than our expectation. So the public-private partnership is an exercise that we have basically come forward, because we believe privatization is no panacea for all ills. But the public-private partnership brings certain responsibility of the state and the private sector getting involved and discharging to a sense of, I would say, sense of transparency. So that is what we are doing. Now in the process, social market economy is where the state comes in on certain areas that you have got to look after. Our problem in our country is that we have subsidies that are not targeted. And that's the reason now, effectively, even petrol that is subsidized, I mean, I'm sure you taxpayers are also paying, enjoying the subsidy. Now, is it required? Not necessary. But low prices, certainly everybody would enjoy. But I'm saying targeting has to happen.
So, Minister, this you had before you came into government, because unless this is how it works in Sri Lanka, I assume that in the time that a political party is in opposition, they're always constantly trying to come into government. So I assume that in that time frame there would be some planning happening for the future when you anticipate to come into government. So in that time, so do you only start planning for targeted subsidies after you come into government, or does this happen while you're in opposition too?
No, that's exactly what we have done in opposition. A 5-year tenure means that you get 1,900 days. And in that process, once you get to office only, you can basically take macro policies into our hands. And with that, we come in with plans, but we have to gel it with what we have inherited. You can have the most grandiose plans, but if you don't have the spend for it, what have you got to do? That's exactly what happened to us. But our promise of the 100 days was fulfilled to the last letter. And through that process, we were able to bring fiscal consolidation as well as financial disciplining. Now with that, now we have the unfolding of the 4-year strategy that will be there, spelled out by the President and the Prime Minister, and you will see that in the next couple of days. Now that will show the strategy and the perspective planning that will be on.
Minister, about the no confidence motion that took place in Parliament. Now, you yourself said that you received a resounding victory when it comes to that, but a number of people who were very vocal about this issue, they wanted a no confidence motion against you, did not turn up in Parliament. Have you become do you demand fear? Have you become the new godfather in Parliament, so that people who wanted this didn't show up? What is this reason? What is the reason behind
this? I don't know the godfather, but I'm certainly regarded as Aradiyal. So my job is to ensure that the limited resources and the unlimited bonds are delivered with my cabinet colleagues to the President, the Prime Minister, what the people that we have promised to the people. So certainly to the extent of the no confidence motion, it was even not signed by Mr. Mahinda Rajapaksa, nor Namal Rajapaksa, or Vimal Weerawansa. So if they don't have the confidence to sign, that just shows how serious they were behind it. So I think it is some way of fraction-oriented people that brought it, and they got the necessary response that they really were looking forward to.
You were talking, Minister, about the tax burden, and that if people tolerated the former government for almost 10 years, they should have, they should tolerate the tax burden. Now, what happens to this debt burden? Now, we were talking about excessive borrowings, but now you continue to borrow. even at a low interest rate. What happens if 30 years later the government then says, no, this happened before us, this happened during Minister Ravi Karunanayaka's time, he borrowed, so we can't do anything, we need to tax you again. What happens then?
Well, what you say can happen, but it won't happen.
Why not?
The simple reason is that we have a sense of responsibility and sense of decency in governing. We do what we say. And on that particular basis, our job is to ensure that our revenues meet sufficiently to pay off our amortization of our debts, that is capital and the interest. Now, to that extent, we have today able to reduce certain expenditure that brought up this debt. If I may take your mind back to 2005, January 1st, the total public debt in our country was 1,784 billion. And when we took office, and today we report 9,900 billion as our debt. So you could see the 5 times increase without the resultant increase reciprocally on the asset or the reserve basis. So there is the problem. When we took office, the revenue was insufficient to pay our debt servicing. Today we can do otherwise. Today we are having countries supporting us that never gave before. It was earlier only a commercial loan from China and China only. Today we have got Japan, who has not been given for the last 10 years, coming in. We thank Japan. India is helping us immensely. Even at the time of crisis, they came and gave us a swap that is there. Likewise, you have the European Union opened up the fisheries that was banned. Your GSPs will probably come by September to us. US are giving capacity support. They are helping us in the IMF and the World Bank, and also the ADB. So all of them manifest that there is a change of policy which is welcome and supported to ensure that this is a new country in the world. You look at the prominence the President got in G7. I was there physically inside when the 7 leaders and the EU met. He sitting on the right of Abe, the Japan Prime Minister, on the left was David Cameron, in front of Obama. You know, what more can a little Sri Lanka get? Now that thereafter the bilaterals were there, and the Japanese aid that were flowing in was something unbelievable. So that is simply because 2 leaders have one policy, and that vision is what is carried out. National government has its price to pay, but also has much more to gain. That gain is what we are consolidating.
Minister, now when you all came into power, 2 pillars that you all spoke of and embarked on was transparency and good governance.
Yes.
Is it there now, transparency and good governance in your
Tell me
government?
one area it is not there. You are right, you have a right of information that we are trying to promise, still not legislated. But I promise that right of information is in the finance minister at any given moment. You all have a right to probe and ask, and we are ready to respond. Any area which is up there, can you tell that there is some corruption going on? We will be the first to hound that out. Of course, human frailty takes place. I am sure you all would be the best test of testimony, able to open yourselves up and question us at any given moment. As for good governance, I just mentioned, removing public servants that have been appointed stealthily, you got the answer.
Minister, you said that you wanted us to point out corruption taking place within your government now. What about the central bank?
Well, I knew you'll come to this. Well, you look at that. When it was mentioned, it was the government that first put forward the 3-member committee. Report came in. That was not good enough was what was mentioned. It was referred to the Bribery and Corruption Commission. It was thrown out. Then it was also not good enough. They brought it before COPE. And it's a recurring decimal that goes on and on. And at this particular...
Minister, you are quite aware that a day prior to the COPE report came into being with regard to the bond scam, Parliament was dissolved by the President. So the COPE report became a draft in the Parliament and was never discussed thereafter. You are well aware of this.
We are well aware of it,
Karunanayaka.
but then what were they twiddling their thumbs all that time? They basically made a big noise, and when they knew it was about to be dissolved only, they brought the report in. That was only for political circus. But then what happened thereafter? Your Sunil Handunhetty, who is now vocally running COPE, you basically have the information being called. And if I may ask the corruption, what is the corruption in that? Now the question is, central bank, there is effectively the question which we ask, what is the corruption? Because it is only a notional perception.
How can be a notion of perception when the son-in-law of the governor of the central bank was involved in the dealing of bonds, Mr. Karunanayaka?
No, that you should look at, that nobody will be basically protected in the process. What you've got to look at is who quoted, at what cutoff was it. look at whether they were
Minister-
accommodated in the process.
Minister, the committee that was appointed by the Prime Minister that investigated this issue made certain recommendations. Overall, the allegation was that the committee was fixed. But there were some recommendations that the committee made. One included finding out why a state bank had acted as a proxy for such to submit a proxy bid on behalf of a company owned by the son-in-law of the governor of the central bank.
Yes.
A proxy bid of several billion rupees. Why was the state bank? Why did that state bank submit that proxy bid? And why was it that most of it went to because they had asked, the committee itself had asked for an investigation into the company that is owned by the central bank's
Yes.
governor's son-in-law.
If I knew that this was being asked, I would have brought the files that were relevant to it. Unfortunately, I am unable to give information.
But was it investigated?
It was certainly investigated. Those reports
Investigated
are
by
being
whom,
investigated by the team that is, whether it was COOP on the recommendation, it went into COOP on that why was Bank of Ceylon giving perpetual that particular right. That was answered, and I'm sure the COOP is dealing with that information.
Mr. Karunak, are you saying
Mr.
that there was no conflict of interest in this bond transaction?
Well, as you said, there was a connection between perpetual and governor. It was basically can be a family this thing, but then it was two different entities. Now the difference is, was there accommodation of such owing to this fact?
The governor of the central bank, Mr. Karunak, speaking to me just days after the incident took place, said that, yes, I am responsible. I did not inform the primary dealers about increasing the bond from 1 billion to 10 billion. So there was a mistake committed, and the governor of the central bank admitted to this mistake. Why is he still the governor of the central bank?
Well, now
if
that
is
you
the
open
case?
the subject matter on that basis, I would basically say these are traded openly. What was done with Nivad Cabral? He had it back door. He had unsolicited proposals coming in and fixed the rate and come out. Nobody talked of what lost of billions that are there. You all look at a transparent process.
I thought
where-
this was good governance, Mr.
Yes,
Karunak.
certainly. So I appreciate that's good governance is transparency. You have the entire market able to talk because it had transparency. Previously, for 11 years, they did it behind the doors. Nobody knew what was going on. I may quote Templeton. They basically bought 3.5 billion from Templeton. And at what rate? At 14 to 14.5%. And this is the reason why we are unable to reduce interest rates in this country. Because Nivad Cabral in 2010 invited Templeton and fixed the rates in order to ensure that they enjoy 14 to 14.5%. Why are you all not
And you're
asking?
going on the same footsteps
I'm
of
asking,
the...
why are you all not basically trying to compare as to we are trying to reduce interest rates to 5.5 to reduce government borrowing. And on that particular basis, we are constrained because Templeton keeps offloading this.
So there is no good governance.
Where good
There
governance?
is no good governance in Sri Lanka because you all are also following on the footsteps of the previous regime.
Good governance is what we inherited was bad governance. Now we have gone into good governance.
The Minister, you have the FCID which is under a subcommittee of cabinet chaired by the Prime Minister. Is the FCID investigating Ajit Nivad Cabral on these allegations?
Well, I don't know whether it is ethical for me to say something which is on. And I would, even though others, they played politics with us, I would give the sense of decency to them that those matters are being looked at.
But you can definitely talk about something, Mr. Karunak.
What you ask me, I can, because those are certain
Yes,
matters.
you
But
said-
certainly, nobody will be spared of what went on. And also, if I may add on, the hedging deal was another one where today petrol prices have to be increased by 10-12 rupees just to pay the past sins of Citibank, Deutsche Bank, and all the things that we lost cases.
Minister,
What they were done. So these were having an impact of almost 100 billion that is there. And that's the reason why one after the, as for the hedging, certainly it will be investigated.
So one more question on...
You spoke about, Mr. Karunak, you spoke about two entities trading at the trading floor at that time. Are you referring to perpetual treasuries, or are you referring to the mother company of perpetual treasuries here?
No, I'm referring to, I said
Perpetual
two entities
treasuries.
was Central Bank and Perpetual.
Right.
They were basically, here is Central Bank on one side and Perpetual on the other. That's a conflict you're saying now?
Yes.
So that's what I opened the subject. So on that area, you should see at what point it was cut off and whether it was accommodated to accept that one. Then it is a problem. But was it the case?
The governor of the central bank
Now, the
was
other one
on the
is
trading floor at that time.
No. I don't think that was the right statement at all. It was refuted, and I don't think it's correct. So remember, this doesn't come under my ministry. I'm only assisting you because I, as a finance minister, has a sense of right to answer.
We'll talk in length about you not having the central bank as well, Mr. Karunaika, in a moment. However, you know for a fact that Arjun Aloysius, who was a member of Perpetual Treasuries, left the company, however was a director of the mother company in question, the holding company. And when you take a look at the central bank list of primary dealers, you have Arjun at Perpetual Treasuries as the email address put in as well. So there is clear-cut conflict of interest, Mr. Karunaika. So there is corruption that took place at the central bank.
Now, conflict of interest, yes, there could have been. Whether it is corruption is completely different, because whether this insider trading had led to a problem was what needed to be looked at. Now, that is what is being investigated. And it has gone on to the 3-member committee, went to bribery and corruption, went into court.
There is a misconception, Mr. Karunaika, about the Cope report, because the Supreme Court was the petition was seeking the Supreme Court to direct the Monetary Board to investigate the bond scam. However, not the workings of the bond scam as done in the Greek bonds, Mr. Karunaika. So we need to correct that here.
Sorry?
The Greek bonds, we saw the workings of the bond were being investigated thoroughly by the Supreme Court. However, in this case, the Supreme Court was directed to investigate, a monetary board to investigate independently what happened at the...
So that's the choice of the Supreme Court. We can't be interfering in...
The petition was such.
So who petitioned? You could ask the petitioner. Why should you be accusing the government of that?
So you cannot say that the Supreme Court dismissed an incident of this sort.
So you are the one who basically tried to cite the Greek bond as this. So what is prayed for is what they give relief to. Minister, so what the petitioner should be asked, why he didn't have exercised...
Do you think there was corruption at the central bank, Mr. Karunaika?
Frankly, this needs to be answered directly. No corruption. This is a notional entry or notional impact that had, where you basically said from 1 to 10 billion, why was that 1 to 10 billion taken? On one side, the government wants revenue. At that time, you have a thing open. Now, whether it was prudent enough to make 1 to 10 without getting back and telling was the question that is there.
Was there insider trading at the central bank at that point?
That's the reason. If there was insider trading, you should look at whether this was the only one accommodated to accept that, or were there people below that also got accommodated. So if one person had insider information, how did there 10 other companies go below was also able to accept that?
Do you think that the governor's term should be extended, Mr. Karunaika?
Well, frankly, I believe that that's a situation where the President and the Prime Minister is talking, and I don't want to come in between and tell. But as for efficiency, certainly. But as for whatever that is going on, there is a discussion that is going on. And a lot
of people respect you in the Colombo district, Mr. Karunaika. You are the leader of the United National Party as far as Colombo is concerned. You are the assistant leader of the United National Party as well. If I am to ask you your personal opinion about the extension of the governor's term, what would it be?
Well, I think it should be extended.
Why?
For the simple reason that there is, I mean, remember...
There is no other competent people in Sri Lanka to handle the central bank?
There are quite a lot of competent people. Don't let me hold a brief. I am a member of the cabinet appointed by the President and the Prime Minister. And in the process, you're asking me a direct question. And if I say no, that means I don't have confidence. So if that is the case, that is a very unfair statement. All you ask me whether if you go to a point, would you? And I basically say yes, because there is no corruption that I perceive.
Do you think the integrity of the governor of the central bank has come into question?
Yes, certainly. That is unfairly, like the no confidence motion that he brought against. I'm not holding a brief. I'm being as open as I could, but I also want to be as responsible as I could and be fair.
I want to drag your attention to John Exter's report, Mr. Ravi Karunaika. He says that if the governor's integrity has been questioned, he no longer is able to serve as the governor of a central bank. Are you aware of the statement, Mr. Karunaika?
Well, I've heard of it, and now you repeat it. So that's a statement that has been uttered, and that is left for the President and the Prime Minister to take necessary action.
Minister Ravi Karunaika, you said that one of the reasons that the media is focusing on this particular bond issue is because there was greater transparency. And you have also said that we are moving towards greater transparency and better good governance. Why then has the central bank been cited as one of the exemptions in the draft of the Right to Information Bill? And why is it being reported that the governor of the central bank has reportedly told his staff not to divulge information anymore?
No, that is absolutely wrong.
It was reported in the Sunday newspaper.
No, Sunday, what newspaper? There are tabloids that are there, various scurrilous emails that go along, and websites that don't have, they don't know whom they're reporting for.
What about in the Right to Information Bill?
Absolutely, they have
Central Bank has
absolute
been
right, and you
listed as
tell
an
us where
exemption.
it is, we'll ensure all that information is made public. If there's such statement, that will be overruled.
So that will be amended in Parliament when the bill comes to
There is
Parliament?
no amendment, it is not there. It is no restriction has been there. Because Prime Minister went even one step further by saying here we will open out investigations to all matters and ensure report back to Parliament every 3 months. And I've been copied in to ensure
I don't have the draft with me, the draft that was gazetted, but I believe it was section 5(1)(c),
right of information.
Right to Information.
Right of information trying to
5(1)(c).
exclude central bank. I'm definitely.
Now then, you should have the facts.
Minister, now
5(1)(c).
one question.
I mean that
Karunaika.
would basically be muted.
You don't have to
until-
answer that question, Mr. Karunaika, because you did not have the facts on board. Just
Minister,
Chaturanga.
now COPE is investigating the governor of the central bank at the moment, and his tenure is due to end on the 30th of June. And if, as you say, he's reappointed, based on your opinion, he's to be reappointed, he will be reappointed. What if the COPE comes forward and says, okay, this was a mistake, the governor has done a mistake, then are you going to once again blame and say it's past sins and just going to forget
Again,
about it?
No.
Chaturanga, you cannot ask hypothetical questions from Mr. Karunaika. It's not fair to ask hypothetical questions at the moment because he's individual responding to it. However, Mr. Karunaika, if you wish to answer, you can go ahead and answer.
Certainly, I mean that's a fairly direct question. I like to give a straight answer. There is no way that anybody in our administration will be shielded. Whether the Prime President and the Prime Minister did tell one thing, appointed the cabinet. He said, you are members that are appointed to hold temporary office. And in that process, you discharge to the best of your ability.
The answer, Minister,
Nobody
I'm
will
looking
be
for
shielded.
is whether if anyone is proved guilty, whether they will be punished or not.
Absolutely, to the letter.
To the letter.
Absolutely.
Even if it's the
But
government.
remember, this interview has taken as if there's only a scam in the central bank. Yes, the central bank had scams on Niwat Cabral, which is silent. Now, is it because we have that was corrupt and it went off that you are going to be silent? Billions are locked out because of Templeton. Billions are there of hidden deal. Look at the Defence Academy that was there at Akuregoda. Originally 20 billion to be spent, today
But if we
59.
question you about it, you would say they are past sins.
Beg your pardon?
If we question about
No,
you
no, no,
about
no, no, no.
Aditya Cabral, you would
So
say they are past
then
sins.
in that case, what are you trying to say? You are trying to tell me the past is forgotten, the unborn future is the only one to be questioned. How are you going to transgress? That is the only limited area that we have got to look at.
But the
I-
bond issue happened during your tenure.
Yeah, so that is corrective action that were taken. That was the first was the 3-member committee. Not good enough, went to judiciary. Not good enough, went to bribery, corruption. Not good enough, went to COPE. So I don't understand that you can conceal information all over. But I ask the question again: what is the financial loss that is there? I mean, there has to be some quantification. I'm saying Akurekoda was 10 billion, went up to 59 billion. I'm telling the Norachori plant, which was 259 billion, the former president Chandrika Kumaratunda, she mentioned that it was torn off and it was signed at $525 million. That increased to 100%. Where has it gone? We have taken over the roads now. The Minister Lakshman Kiriala was able to report through the RDA chairman that the roads done by us have reduced by 21% over the last lot of roads that were done. So these are the savings. You look at the Katunaik Expressway, which was 5 billion, which was estimated in 2000, was 49 billion in 2011.
So, Minister, let me ask you once
So-
again: if someone is proven guilty, even if it's a governor of the central bank, action will be taken regarding that what they've done.
Absolutely.
You
No
give your
question
word
about
regarding it.
Mr. Karunanika,
Sarada, we have to go for a short commercial break. We have to leave it at that for the moment. When we come back, we are in conversation with Minister of Finance, Ravi Karunaika. Stay connected, stay with Face the Nation. We will be right back. Corruption? Let's talk more about this after commercial break. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. We're in conversation with the Minister of Finance, Ravi Karunaika. Mr. Karunaika, you spoke about good governance and an incident that took place recently in the government, the suspension of Anusha Palpita as one of the chairmen of the boards. Now, what about the minister who appointed his brother as a chairman of a ministry? Why aren't you talking about this incident?
Well, I don't think appointing a brother is of any error that is there. It may be that he feels confident with the person who has experience in the system.
Is this what the people voted all in?
No, there is no prohibition to appoint.
There was, if you recollect right, Mr. Karunaika, I remember you being there as well. President Maithripala Sirisena, when addressing all new ministers, said that a committee would be appointed.
Yes.
Under his patronage.
That's right.
And all the chairmen will have to go through the particular board in question. So you mean to say that the president and the prime minister approved the brother of this particular minister being appointed to this particular board in question?
Yes. Everybody. There's nobody that can be appointed. No minister can appoint anybody without the committee approving.
Are you all trying to protect anyone from the previous regime, Mr. Karunaika? A question posed by many.
Well, I also get that feeling sometimes the people have that, because there are some shady guys that are still neutrally working, and I see as to that being inimical, and I'm sure that is being corrected.
You have an individual named Mr. Udanga Veeratunga, who was accused of the acquisition of fighter jets from Ukraine and accused of supplying weapons to anti-government forces in that country. However, this individual in question, who should be issued a red notice with, is roaming freely. He has been even given a passport.
That's right.
By your government. Why?
That's exactly the case. Abid Udyanga should be questioned, as well as former President Mahinda Rajapaksa, as to how he met a fugitive in Thailand. He went empty.
He's not a fugitive anymore, Mr. Karunaika, because he has been given a passport by your government.
No, giving a passport,
I can give you the passport number if you wish to.
I know that, but giving a passport does not make you non-fugitive, because he is basically Interpol chasing, and they can't find that. That's the element of safety that he has. But he is able to use the Sri Lankan passport and able to move from Ukraine to Thailand and without any problem.
Mr. Karunaika, you have a Sri Lankan passport, I believe.
Yes.
You don't have a Singapore passport.
I'm a Sri Lankan.
The passport very clearly states that the President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka requests and requires all those whom it may concern to allow the bearer to pass freely without let or hindrance, and to afford the bearer such assistance and protection as may be necessary. The passport issued by your government very clearly states this.
Yes.
And you cancelled the diplomatic passport of Udanga Veeratunga, which bears number D3643585,
yes,
and issue him a passport,
yes,
a fugitive.
Yes.
Why not issue a red notice?
No, fugitive was subsequent. No sooner he loses his ambassadorial status, he loses the diplomatic status. So as a result, there was a shift from diplomatic passport to a normal passport, that is courtesy to anybody. He becomes fugitive thereafter, after the checks are done. Subsequently, his passport has been withheld, or at least it's been impounded. But whether he's roaming around still, God only knows.
But your government issued the passport.
Yes, so that's as of now, I'm informed that it is debarred. So now he can't fly around with a Sri Lankan passport. Because the
what is the passport he's going to use now, Mr. Karunaika?
God only knows. You must ask him, or ask Mahinda Rajapaksa. I'm sure he'll be able to tell, because he went out swinging hands and came back without a full thing. So who gave what is the question?
Has a red notice been issued for his arrest?
Otherwise?
By whom?
By the CID as well as the Interpol.
So you mean to say that a red notice by the Interpol headquarters in France have been issued to all countries to arrest Udanga Veeratunga wherever they see him?
That's right.
Thank you very much.
At least to my reckoning, that is the case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karunaika, for highlighting that fact. I open the floor for questions to Mr. Karunaika. Again, I request the journalists to ensure that you have asked direct questions from Mr. Karunaika without posing hypothetical questions. Okay, let's start off with Sarita.
Mr. Karunaika, I'm curious. In the aftermath of the defeat of the no confidence motion, we saw you adorning a garland or what looked like 5,000 rupee notes? Were they real?
Well, these are our supporters that come and in their joy, you know, they bring this to a thing. Whether it's real or not was not known by me.
Who took this garland after the celebrations, Mr. Karanayaka? You need to catch him and arrest him. It was garlanded to you. Just Chandra, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to know, because if it's fake, then perhaps you would have violated the monetary law.
No, that's right. I don't know what this.
But going back, was it an image that you would have really wanted to project?
No, what can I do? These are supporters that come along, and you know, they do certain things that sometimes may not be to the best of this, but the significance is that they try to show that this is related to money. And you know, I mean, there are many that come and put Apple these things on, and that doesn't mean that you're owner of Apple orchard or something.
Currency is different. Minister, I want to know
what is put on our heads are the people who basically come and support us, so you don't know what they put on us.
I want to know how you view the financial security of Sri Lanka, given the fact that the IMF has, an audit has revealed that we have debt over 1 trillion. What is Sri Lanka's financial security looking like at the moment?
Charita, I must give all the confidence that there is no fear of the overrun at the moment. 1.2 trillion is only what was not disclosed. This is to the 9.9 billion that is outstanding. So remember, what has got to be done is how we have got to ensure that these are projected into the future. So we are basically going ahead, and there is no alarm at all. There is sufficient funds to make payment. Our debt servicing is honoured to the letter, as well as we are finding new sources of revenue that are having longer tenure, shorter or lesser interest rate. So with that, you are able to have your debt servicing that much reduced. Now you asked the question how safe and how vulnerable it is. I would say that it is, from the vulnerability it was on January 2015, it will move to a much stronger, a more safer and a more secure situation. IMF coming and giving that endorsement was something that we really invested in. It was not necessary for IMF to come in. We were not in the sense of any area of balance of payments problem, but their endorsement was certainly a very useful tool for us to take the economy to a better tomorrow. You would see from then a lot of investment deposits that have come in. There are a lot of investments that have been looked at. Because when the IMF endorsement is there, they know that the country is basically financially disciplined.
Minister Ravi Karanayaka, I'd like to ask you about, in the budget, it was proposed to increase the annual registration fee for companies to 60,000 rupees for private companies, 500,000 rupees for public quoted companies, and 100,000 for foreign companies with branches and other companies. Now this levy is not a tax on profit; it's a tax on existence, isn't it?
Yes. Now,
do you think now, for example, 60,000 rupees for private companies, or in the case of 500,000 rupees for public listed companies, for some conglomerates with multiple companies that are listed on the stock exchange, that's a pretty hefty price to pay for existing, isn't it?
Well, if you look at the smaller companies, yes, but for the public companies, it's far too low. I'm talking of a country where you have 22 million people and only 28,000 tax files that are there. Aren't we shameful? You're having payee of almost 400,000 people, that's the payee files, but corporate direct taxes are 28,000. So is this sufficient to take the country forward? We are talking of the third generation developments that are taking place, and we are retarded ourselves with the tax base eroding.
In that case, Minister, why is the government wasting time with indirect taxes like VAT and NBT? Why aren't you all taking a concerted effort to expand the tax net?
Yeah, but then you can't. You have to have indirect taxation, collect revenue to go forward. Direct taxation takes time. You impose today, you have 24 months to get to this thing, because you have a tax return. It has 18 months to come forward, and that doesn't help you to take the country forward. We are committed with costs committed by the previous regime. We are going to carry that on, and we are going to have the revenue spent to go forward with the development activities.
The majority of the tax revenue now comes from indirect taxes. Do you have a have a plan?
The country has 1,500 billion coming in. Majority comes in from customs. Secondly, from inland revenue, 384 billion, and the balance comes from excise.
I mean from indirect and direct taxes.
So indirect taxes come into the inland revenue of the 384, majority, almost 80% is indirect, and the balance is direct taxation.
Do you have a plan to expand direct taxation?
Definitely.
Reduce indirect taxation?
Definitely. That is,
the VAT is a temporary measure?
VAT is temporary measure. I tell with all honesty that as soon as we are able to get on top of the revenue coming to almost 17-18% of GDP, we'll give that benefit back onto the people.
So
we are not a government that will tax unnecessarily, and will certainly ensure that that is used productively.
So in the near future, you're saying that in the near future we can expect to see the VAT being reduced and more emphasis put on direct taxation?
Yes, certainly that will be the case. Remember, VAT is a non-regressive tax because it has an input basis. On one side you pay, you have an output that is there. So as it is, only the value added is tax, unlike indirect taxation where it is regressive. So that is the difference why VAT has earned a reputation as opposed to NBT. I mean, 1% of VAT brings you about 30 billion. 1% of NBT, which is Nation Development Tax, brings you 55 billion. So it was very much easier to put 2% of NBT rather than 4% of VAT. But VAT has a system where you are able to have input-output tax, and that regressivity is reduced.
Minister, we spoke about the tax burden, we spoke about the debt burden. Now, very recently, a minister from your cabinet came forward and said every citizen of the country will have to incur a cost of 23,000 as a result of the loss that was incurred by Sri Lankan Airlines. First of all, is this amount correct? 23,000 is a huge amount.
Well, if you look at the Sri Lankan, it's a pathetic story. 1979 you have Air Lanka, 1980, 1997, 98 you privatized to Sri Lankan. Sri Lankan privatized to Emirates. Suddenly Mahinda Rajapaksa decides that Emirates don't request give in to his panders into his request, so they take Emirates off. With that, on 2009 April 1st, you have a 9,800 million carry forward reserve or profit that is there, carry forward. The same thing as of 2015 in 187 billion loss. So in that span you have lost out that amount of money of taxpayers. These are direct loss written onto the profit and loss of the company. In the process they go and buy 8 aircrafts, pledging the country's assets into, or the country's guarantees into a contingent liability. They buy 350-900s which can fly 15-16 hours when our longest sector is 10 hours or 10-20 hours to 10 hours 20 minutes to London or Japan. Now this is the problem that we are faced with, and that contingent liability has tantamounted to almost 467 billion, and that was the full exposure that we mentioned. So this divided by the 22 million will basically bring you the per capita debt. So that is what the former chairman Wickramasinghe and the CEO how they ran the airline. Now that has to be carried forward. We have to pay that. Now are we going to be silencing bad governance? So that is the plight that we are in. That is not the only one. You look at the Noracholi I mentioned, you look at the Akurigoda that I mentioned, you look at the Surya grounds that are there in Hambantota. You know, you have Ports Authority building grounds.
How much of experience does the current board of Sri Lankan Airlines have, airline experience? How much of experience does this current board have?
How much experience?
Yes, airline experience.
I must say that the airline experience is very low, that is there. But certainly
they can't manage
the board of directors are better than the previous one, but still not good up to expectation.
So the right decision was to privatize Sri Lankan Airlines?
Well, commercialization is the answer. That's why we are going in for a reform process. We are asking for requests for proposals, RFPs. In the process, looking at a partner that can hold our hands, bring the capital in, and take. We need a Sri Lankan flag carrier, and we'll certainly ensure that.
You are not happy with the management of Sri Lankan Airlines, is that right?
Well, absolute honesty, no.
Minister,
that can be much better.
Minister, so yet the people have to incur 23,000 as
no, there is no loss. No, the debt is there. We have reduced the debt of the loss that was 32 billion to 14 billion. But I expect, and I'm sure the President and the Prime Minister was expecting a much more concerted effort. Now that has undercapitalization, I must confess. It also has overstaffing that is there. So both put together, you can only reduce to a certain degree.
So let me zoom out and ask you this question. people of Sri Lanka have to undergo the tax burden, the debt burden, and also the loss burden of the previous government.
Yes, what else to do? Can you
Yes,
write
sir.
them off? If you can give me a prescription that can write off, I'll be as happy as you to do that as quick as possible.
Is it fair, Minister?
Well, what is expected? This is one of the weaknesses of democracy. You have China, you don't have that. You either you pay it or you get out. So that's the difference between democracy and autocracy.
Minister, you said that Sri Lankan.
Now, being fair, is it fair for us to carry the burden of somebody else's? He's like a family that earns 100,000 and spends 1 million. 900,000.
So can't you ask them, that family, for the money?
Absolutely, that's what we are getting to.
And how long will that take?
Well, I hope it's quicker than later.
Minister, you said that Sri Lankan spent a lot of money on aircraft that it did not need,
Yeah.
like the A350s. Do you think that our ministers need fuel guzzling, super luxury
Four-wheel drive.
Four-wheel drives?
I'm sure they're
What's
not,
wrong with a hybrid sedan?
I'm sure
You'd save money on the fuel as well.
No, they're not at all spend that is given to them. What is given is a duty paid vehicle that is there. And I'm sure you don't expect a minister of this country to go in a say 1000cc vehicle either. And you basically also have to basically be able to provide, long runs that are there. And in the process, why are you only targeting ministers that are there? What about the the judges that are there, the Supreme Court judges that are there? What about the High Court judges? Why are you singling out only the ministers?
So why doesn't the government bring forward a policy? Because the government is talking about moving towards greener alternatives and sustainable development, etc., etc. Why don't you give a policy? Start all public vehicles that will be imported, all vehicles imported by the state in the future will be alternative fuel.
Well, those policies are already brought in. We during the first budget that we brought in, we ensured not only that, we also had operating leases rather than use, because one of the biggest spends are maintenance after the second year. And you suddenly have fictitious payments that are coming. Today all those are bygones, where cars have to come on operating leases. So you're able to confine yourself to specifically knowing this is the cost that is there. And we have given the same thing. Your spend is this, anything more than that is not tolerated.
Minister, why do your fellow parliamentarians and ministers, why do they need brand new cars to serve people?
Well, you want them to give a bullock car?
Not a bullock car.
So then what is car means definition?
Is that a priority right now?
No, it is certainly not. It
What
is
about
certainly-
a hybrid, like a can I mention a few car names?
Dadin, I think your question should be very direct to Minister
No,
Karnataka.
it's a very direct question. What's wrong with a more fuel efficient, low cost hybrid alternative? Why do you need to have a fuel guzzling supercar?
There are no guzzlers that are being used at. We don't have the ones that have 3 kilometers to a liter operation anymore. It has to be within the spend that is approved. Now, if I may ask the question, now you're firing, I appreciate that, and we are right to answer. Likewise, when the media gets a duty-free bike or laptop which is there, why are they not being condoned? Now that is basically story silent. You don't have the papers carrying that. But by chance you have something that comes with a duty-free tag. There is no duty-free tag that is there. They have to pay duty for ministers as well. And there was a question posed when there was floods and all those things. No, the Prime Minister very clearly said priority is for the flood victims and the Salava housing disaster that took place with the armory that was on fire. But we as a government, those priorities come first. Cars are second.
Well, who will be funding this money? 650 houses were completely damaged.
Government of Sri Lanka.
The government of the Treasury.
It's not 650,268. There were almost 600 partially and totally gutted. There were business entities of 155 that were there. The recent is the Friday we had a meeting. Yesterday, Prime Minister, myself, Anurya.
When will you all fund these
It has already
households?
started. Today, the first lot of families got 50,000 per house per month, going on until the houses are resurrected to its proper order. And
funds will
our
be found
initial
by the Treasury.
estimation is that it will cost almost about 1.5 billion.
5 billion.
1.5 billion.
5 billion was the estimated loss as far as the army is concerned. Who's going to fund this, Mr. Karnataka?
Well, it's all in flames. Nobody funds it. It is already a spend that was there, which is now in thin air.
The Treasury is not going to do anything about it.
Well, it is. What else can I do?
We don't need weapons.
We need weapons. You have
You
to have
all
your,
have an intention of buying
course,
weapons.
this was a surplus that was really substandard, that was ready to be exported. And as a result, you know, we just lost
Minister,
5 billion.
you spoke at length earlier. You were very happy when the 1.5 billion extended fund facility from the IMF came through.
It was not 1.5, it was 1.5 plus 800 plus the other countries supporting the cause, which was almost tantamount to about 3.5 billion.
To about 3.5 in total, the extended fund facility. Was that a bailout?
No.
It was
As I
a bailout.
said, there was no necessity at all to go in for IMF bailout, because there was no bailout. It was only an abundance of prudence that it was a cautionary approach, because the world was in economic turbulence. China devaluing by 11%, India devaluing by 17%, ISIS bombing all over in Middle East, so we were wondering whether if there's additional bombings, whether people have to come back again. So we thought, why should we get caught up in a trap? Let us get the financial endorsement of IMF, and with that process go forward to the next league. And I guess that has paid its dividends.
Mr. Karunaka, you said that an investor promised $1 billion deposits in Sri Lanka to help defend its currency. Where is this money now, Mr. Karunaka?
Well, that not deposits. You have a person in Belgium who likes to invest instead of getting a negative return. He'll love to bring it here and take a 3-4% return and get back. Those are matters that come in and go out, and no questions, because they have a right to bring in, make advantage and take out.
Did he deposit the money, $500 million? He was supposed to do it in 2 equal tranches.
Now, to be frank, it was not, we mentioned 1 billion, but the 1 billion didn't come in, but quite a close sum to that came in.
How much was it, Mr. Karunaka?
I think it is not right to do so, because really that over publicity deterred them, and they're wondering, you know, why is this spot on that was there? You know, it was mentioned what country, all those things. So I think a sense of decency needs to be given, because we want more of those deposits to come. To be very frank, Japan, you have a negative return. To save in a bank, you have to pay the bank. In Europe, it's the same. So what we are trying to do is to get the feeling that here is a place to invest where you can get 400% return rather than the negative return there.
Ms. Karunaka, do you recollect your budget speech last year?
Yeah.
You say that the levy that was supposed to be imposed on companies that were registered will be increased to 60,000. Correct me if I'm wrong, from 3,000 rupees approximately.
That's what Nadine asked, and that question that was posed to 60,000, and I said, you said public companies 500,000, foreign companies 100,000.
The minister said that too was not enough.
That was the smaller companies, I must say, we have revised that.
No, the question is not that. Why is that the registrar of companies is saying now that you need to pay this sum of money again? Now, it was not, there's no legislation on this.
What is on is that you harp on 60,000 that is paid by a company. There are 82,000 companies in the country, and of that, majority are basically dormant. So you pay an auditor about 30,000 and a company secretary 35,000 without batting eyelid. But government that provides the infrastructure to the country, you can't pay 5,000 a month. Now, what is the company that can't pay 5,000 that should be in existence? It's not a beetle.
No, it's 60,000 rupees
no,
now,
but 60,000 is a year, 5,000 is a month. What is the company that doesn't have a trading of 5,000? You can pay, as I said, the auditor and the secretary almost up to 60,000
So companies are supposed to pay this amount?
Companies are supposed to, but we have revised that now about 2-3 weeks ago in order to accommodate, because there was some who basically was thinking that this was unfair. So we have responded to their call, and we have increased the other companies that can pay on the capital value of that company. So the smaller companies have basically given a redress.
Ms. Karunaka, with regard to, you brought about an international example about Brazil. I want to bring another international example about Nigeria. Nigeria was able to locate $10 billion that was stolen by the previous regime. However, Sri Lanka is still floundering about the money that went out of this country. It's been 1 year and 7 months, Mr. Karunaka.
Nigeria took 13 years to do that, and we in our 14 months have been able to bring some spectacular things. It is still not made public because it has to go through the process. So you're comparing Nigeria, which basically loot was about 100 billion, 13 years they brought X amount. We are doing the same. We are hoping it will be much, much quicker, because get to it, you just can't go to a particular country and say, hey, you got money, give it to us, it is X guys, corrupt money. You've got to prove the system.
Is there policy consistency in the country right now?
Yes, absolute policy consistency.
You said that last year, your Prime Minister says that everyone will be given cars. However, right now, the taxation policy clearly states that it has gone up. People can't afford vehicles
What's the
anymore.
contradictory signal there? Then we said we'll afford anybody to get a car, but that doesn't mean that you get free.
With the tax?
Obviously. You
So can people afford it?
Afford it?
No. The affordability, we have reduced car values almost of 16 cars, almost by 400,000.
Your government wants to
Why
make-
are you not mentioning of that?
Your government wants to make Sri Lanka a technology hub. However, telecommunication taxes have also been increased,
Yeah.
Mr. Karunayaka.
Yeah.
Is it aligned with your policy?
Yes, it is. We are giving Wi-Fi free of charge to the nation, and in the same process we are also taxed from where they can be also paid for.
Minister Karunanayaka, what is your position, or what is your party's position on capital gains tax?
It will be imposed.
It
We'll
will
be
be.
bringing capital gains within the next couple of months, because we believe that there is a degree of infrastructure development done by the country. We have 28,000 tax files. The business society needs to basically, whoever dabbles in capital gains, need to pay a share of that.
For the benefit
and
of
I
our
think
viewers,
that
Minister,
once
can you
again
quickly
that
tell
is
us-
paid from the haves to the have-nots. And that is the social market economy that we have embarked on.
For the benefit of our viewers, Minister, could you quickly tell us how the capital gains tax will be
Okay,
imposed?
capital gains would be looked at from point of land purchase and sale within ownership of 10 years. Anything before that, inheritance won't be, and thereafter it will be taxed. So if you basically purchase and sell on a traded basis, the gain will be taxed to a certain amount which will be prescribed later. And likewise, if it is shares, once again the trading profit made, the component of the profit will be taxed in the capital gains component.
When
Minister,
will the
there are
capital gains tax be
concerns-
introduced?
Yeah, there are concerns that you are sending a negative signal to investors.
No, I don't think so. I think the investors do not have a free heaven that they don't pay any taxes at all. We will ensure that the lowest tax regime is there, but a sense of decency must exist, that the monies are collected to pay for the country development. I mean, you're talking of Singapore, they have 18% taxes, but your administrative costs all put together, the overall cost is about 30%. Dubai, you have 7% taxes that they call off, but their administrative costs and all put together, it's about 29%. Why I'm able to say that? Because there was companies that were comparing to come to Sri Lanka, pay on the lower taxes, and have the cheaper administration cost that was here. And that's why I was able to reflect to your question.
Minister, who takes economic decisions in the country? Is it the Finance Ministry and the Prime Minister alone, or is it the General Secretary of your party, Kabir Hashim, and the Finance Ministry? What happens? Who takes economic decisions? in the country?
Economic decisions are taken by the President, Prime Minister in the economic statement that they do. They add me on for day-to-day operations and policy statements, and the Cabinet of Ministers give the endorsement to take the policies forward of them.
Right, we go in for a short commercial break. When we come back, it's the final round with Mr. Ravi Karunanayaka. We're in conversation with Mr. Ravi Karunanayaka about the way forward, about how Sri Lanka is moving towards the next era. Where are we standing today? The next round, the final round, of course, will have the questions that you require at home. You have to know whether you will get rich, yes or no. So that is the final round. Let's start off the final round after this short commercial break. Stay connected. Stay with Face the Nation. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation. Mr. Karunayaka, an ordinary citizen of this country, how can he get rich in the present economic conditions?
Well, I think it is the incumbency of the government to ensure that we create the appetite as well as we create the economy where people are able to put their best skills forward and get the dividends what they deserve. Now, in the process, it's not an easy fix, but certainly that's why we are constraining ourselves where cost reductions, revenue increases, and able to increase economic activities. Our job is to ensure that we bring economic progressiveness through investments into capital expenditure. Roads are one of the areas, housing is one of the areas, waterworks is one of the areas, then developing the banking sector. We are looking at the Colombo International Financial Center, which will be in the next 2-3 months showcase, where we believe that we are home to almost 30% of world population, being India, Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, all being there, and the monies go to Singapore and Dubai instead of come to Sri Lanka. So we want to get a traction of some of them. Then we are looking at, you know, showcasing our education, our the hospital trading, etc., and also make agriculture commercially viable. At the moment is sustainable agriculture that is going on, or sustenance agriculture. We want to make it commercially viable agriculture policy that is there, and through that industrial revolution to take place. Then create the jobs that are there. Ensure that the people get an opportunity with your intrinsic skills, that you are able to have a job, 2 jobs, or whatever that is there. Controlling costs may be difficult sometimes from cost of living, but certainly while that is being ruthlessly fought, our job is to try and to get revenues added on, or additional revenue gaining operations to take place, and also make interest rates lower so that the challenge can be taken by the younger generation, that they can afford to take that risk and borrow today for tomorrow's investment.
Ms. Karunaika, are you satisfied with the Ministry of Finance minus the banks, especially the central bank?
Well, what is given is what I do. And
are you satisfied?
It is, well, I'm certainly satisfied. And because even though it is not certainly there at our disposal, and we have a collective team, there's no one-man showship that is there. So it is a collective responsibility, all bet on into the same direction of able to give the benefit that is there. You may ask whether it's easy at times. Okay, instead of being under you may be easier, but we don't have any problem at all, because our colleagues, our cabinet colleagues work in unison, and that does not have any repercussions to smooth running.
Ms. Karunaika, don't you think that you need the banks to act as the Minister of Finance in the country and take Sri Lanka to the next level?
Yes, certainly. Some say that sans the banks is like a tavern without arak, you know. So likewise, but I believe that there is no basic retarding of the process, because we work in unison. So there is no problem, because the command that is given is carried out by them as if it is with us as well. So our job is to ensure that the economy grows soundly, transparency and good governance, and more than that, the taxpayers' money, the maximum benefit comes in. All projects that are there now have a cost-benefit analysis, internal rate of return that is there, and return on investment that is there. So with the limited resources that are there, with unlimited bonds, our job is to ensure that we make the divide to the best of the taxpayers' advantage and the people at large.
You're a powerful minister in the cabinet, Mr. Karunaika. A cabinet reshuffles in the cards?
No, I don't think so, because you say that is powerful, but we all act in the same collective way that is there. No, we want to be as human as we could. We know the problems that are there. We have our feet to our ground. And all we want to do is be responsive to the business society. We want to be responsive to the people. Our job is to ensure that we provide the best of ability to the nation at any given moment. We have gone through many economic turbulences. We have to navigate our economy into the right direction. You know, I don't think any government that has come into such short office has gone through economic turbulence, has gone through a catastrophic geographical disaster as the floods that were there, then the Salava that was there, and worstly, inheriting an economy where it has been looted, where we are unable to look at tomorrow without yesterday's money being there. So, putting all together, consolidating, having future plans all put together, and giving the sense of confidence to the people, I think we have done our best in the trying circumstances that are there. But together we'll ensure that the people will be able to get a better tomorrow than what they are enjoying today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ravi Karunaika, for joining us this evening. Minister of Finance, thank you very much. Nadine, thank you very much. Chaturanga, thank you very much. Charita, for joining us this evening as well. A few things to take back home. Mr. Ravi Karunaika is very concerned about arresting those who are corrupt. He also believes somewhat that the government is trying to protect individuals like Udyanga Verutunga, maybe, individuals who are now in the government's pocket, maybe, you never know. And then he's concerned about Sri Lankan Airlines as well. He said that the management of the Sri Lankan Airlines board is not satisfied at all. Where is the country heading? We were in conversation with the Minister of Finance, Ravi Karunanayake. We can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them. Albert Einstein. Take care. Good night.